Carolina, obviously not under our current severe thunderstorm watch. Could we see more issued downstream? Absolutely. It's going to be a later evening threat for you guys in the western North Carolina mountains. We get a live look from Buncombe County government, and we've got the clouds already beginning to develop overhead. A lot of times you look at the mountains of western North Carolina for the earlier onset of those summertime thunderstorms, but today with our disturbance moving through, it could be a little bit later. Now, wouldn't say that doesn't mean you couldn't see anything hit or miss before that. We look at the future radar here in the Asheville, Greenville, upstate South Carolina area. And again, through mid to late afternoon, an isolated shower or thunderstorm would be a possibility. Got to watch along I-40 down into places like Transylvania County, Rutherford County. Now we look at the mid to late evening, and that's when we begin to up our coverage. Also up the intensity of the storms. Things will be on the spicier side as they work into the Asheville area, moving closer to Greenville, Spartanburg by the time we get closer to midnight. So for some of these areas, it's going to be very late into the evening, early overnight that you may hear those rumbles of thunder. By 4 o'clock in the morning, most of the activity moves out, but I do think along the state line, Tennessee, North Carolina, still watching for a few isolated showers, maybe a rumble of thunder. Knoxville, Tennessee, Gatlinburg, Tennessee, into the state of North Carolina. So we look at like Cherokee County. These are areas to watch a little bit earlier than Asheville. So for you guys, probably dinner time into the mid-evening hours. So right when you sit down to watch those primetime TV shows, you're like, oh man, the thunder's kind of interrupting my program. By the time we get to 11 o'clock, the late evening news, a lot of that will be moving off towards the south and east. So for those of you who have dogs, you like to go to bed maybe around 9 o'clock, take the dog out a little bit earlier. Otherwise, you're going to be waiting until 11 because I can guarantee you they're not going to want to go out during those storms. Huntsville, Tullahoma, you guys have the thunderstorms during the late day drive. At Chattanooga, it's going to be probably closer to, say, 6, 7 o'clock for the onset. Those continue to move off towards the south and east, closer to, say, the Atlanta metro area as we move closer to the midnight hour, Mike.
And we also...
And remember, we've got July, we've got June on tap, but things are going to be heating up. And so we'll long for these days of some cooler blips on the radar. Right now, it's 64 in the Cincinnati area. So wake of the thunderstorms, we're going to be seeing those high temperatures on the cooler side. Highs in the upper 70s today for Syracuse, low 80s, as I mentioned, in New York, mid 80s from Raleigh to Atlanta to Middle Tennessee, back into central Mississippi, upper 80s in New Orleans, 90 in Orlando, and pretty darn close in Savannah. You'll top out around 89 today. But by tomorrow, with that front moving in, the numbers will be toppling down. With that said, I mentioned that New York 66, I think, is going to be good. 68 in Philly, not too shabby. Boston, low 60s. All right, that's going to be a little cool. And there are areas that won't get out of the 50s. And so I will hear your argument that that's not necessarily ideal. Even with the sunshine, 50s is going to be cool, especially the low 50s for Buffalo, for Burlington. Syracuse, probably around those low to mid 50s as well. You might be 54, 55. But again, it's certainly going to feel more like a fall high temperature than what you would expect here in the later parts of the month of May. 5 to 15 degrees below average. The morning temps, I think those will be maybe more swear word inducing, right? You go outside and you're like, this is not what I wanted here in late May. I thought we were done with the 30s. Binghamton, sub-freezing temperatures Thursday morning. We'll be close in Buffalo and Burlington. I think both drop into the mid 30s. Bangor, Maine at 33. Even 40s for D.C., low 40s for Pittsburgh. And look at our high temps across the southeast, 5, 10, even 15 degrees below average, especially into Georgia and the middle part of the state of South Carolina. Midlands over to Atlanta, Mike, not going to get to 70. Again, it's not terrible. Again, let's just think about what's ahead. We can get through it. And, it's not the 40s.
Yeah, this is very true. And then
tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday, we'll be watching for the opportunity each and every day. Depends on where you are. We look at severe weather today. Not as much of it. I think we're going to see more in the way of general thunderstorms, especially across the desert Southwest. So a little bit early onset of some of this afternoon thunderstorm activity for parts of Arizona and New Mexico. But again, most of that will be staying sub-severe. Tomorrow, front moves in. That'll help to trigger a little bit more coverage across the northern part of the country. Tomorrow, we do look at the possibility of an isolated severe storm from the panhandle of Texas all the way up into parts of the Dakotas. Not an overwhelming severe risk, not a ton of energy to work with tomorrow, but enough energy along with that front that we'll be watching for at least a few thunderstorms to be on the strong side. Mike, later in the week, we look at Oklahoma, Texas, parts of the southern section of Kansas also for storms.
Yeah, and it all makes sense.
Really
when you
cool.
watch it in time lapse.
Not to mention it's just mesmerizing. You can sit there and be like, wow, that's so
We have
cool.
said it so many times. We wish we had just a show that was nothing but time lapse and some cool music.
With awesome music. Yeah, I'd watch it.
I would watch that 24/7.
Right? You're just like, hey, you're watching Weather Underground. Where's Mike Bettis? We call you. You're just at home still watching time lapse. You're like, oh, sorry, I totally lost track.
Oh my
of time.
gosh! Think about that, like time lapse on like a giant big screen TV
Right?
with like
rock
a
music.
kicking sound system.
Oh.
That would be awesome.
We're here for it. We're going to work on it.
It's like the Super Bowl of weather.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Like everybody gets together. You watch it with a big plate of nachos. I mean,
You do a watch party for that?
Yeah, you root for things. You're like, go, go, come on, come
We
on.
are so geeky.
Yeah.
We're so
Give me hail. 5 today. We're going to be watching interstates across parts of the central U.S. through the second half of the week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, thunderstorms back in the area. Parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas. You'll be watching for thunderstorms each of those days, or at least one of those days. Texas, you're a spot we've got to watch really through the second half of the week. There's the front coming in tomorrow, so it's not just Texas, but farther to the north, all the way up into, say, South Dakota. Central South Dakota would be a spot to watch. Amarillo to about Lubbock there into West Texas. Not a ton of available energy, but enough along with that front to get some isolated thunderstorms turning severe. I think we'll see thunderstorms all across the desert Southwest and again into the western plains, but in terms of the severity, we're not going to be looking at, every storm severe tornado warned. I think it will be fewer and farther between. By Thursday afternoon, minimal winds aloft, they'll be picking up, and that will help to fuel more storms back into Texas and Oklahoma.